Welcome to the Show Me the Money podcast, Unlocking Property Finance. Join us on an exciting journey into the world of property finance, where we uncover secrets, strategies, and opportunities that can turn your property dreams into a lucrative reality. Welcome to Show Me the Money, Unlocking Property Finance.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Show Me the Money, helping you to unlock property finance. Myself, one of your co-hosts, Rawdon Sharma. I'm a London-based property developer and investor, and my co-host, Mark.
Hi, everybody. Hope you are all well. If people don't know, I'm a property finance broker and investor as well. And getting ready for the next week in Cannes for the MIPIM Festival.
Indeed. And today we're delighted to be joined by our guest, Keira. Keira, would you be great to introduce yourself to our audience? Tell us a little bit about your background, what you do, and we're looking forward to getting stuck in and asking you some questions about how you're finding the marketplace and your experiences.
Hi, everyone. My name's Keira Rawdon. I'm a property solicitor. So I've been doing this for 22 years now, and I deal with residential and commercial property. I specialise in the property finance stuff, so I do bridging, commercial finance, buy-to-let, all of that kind of stuff. And I also do some of the more creative strategies. So I do lease options and rent-to-rent and tenant buy and exchange delay completion and all of those kinds of weird and wonderful things, title splitting and so on that investors are doing these days.
Brilliant. Well, there's loads of stuff that we can talk about today, which I'm really interested to hear about as well. Fantastic. Well, I guess we're very early stage of the year. We've had a lot of turmoil over the last 18 months or so. Tell us a little bit about what you've been seeing as a solicitor, helping clients to get deals over the line. Very open-ended question, but how have you been finding things? What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
So I think the first quarter's been really good. So it's been much more buoyant than, the equivalent quarter last year. And in fact, it really started, almost sort of third day back in January. The inquiries were just sort of going through the roof, and that has continued. So I think people are kind of getting used to the interest rates that we've now got, and maybe becoming to understand really that you're not going to get 2 or 3% anymore, and sort of valuing deals and evaluating deals, bearing that in mind. And it seems that it's just settled, and people have kind of got more used to it and are therefore more happy to proceed, knowing that that's just how it is now.
And would you say that's the same types of deals, or are you seeing more creative deal structures?
I'm seeing more creative, but I don't know if that's necessarily market wide. I'm seeing more of that because I do that. So It may be that it skews, it's a bit of a bias really, because I'm more likely to see it. But I certainly think that there's a lot of interest in how to do these deals where you're paying less upfront, or you're generating some sort of income stream with a view to purchasing at a later date. So that seems to be happening quite a lot. And it gives people breathing space, it gives the owners certainty, and a small income while they're waiting. So I think there's a lot of that going on at the moment. And then obviously when people are then going ahead with their purchases, there's the finance element at the end also.
Interesting. I mean, even for myself, when I look at deals at the moment, I'm seeing exactly the same thing. It's much harder to make them stack in the traditional way. So you've got to be creative. How do the lenders, if at all, how does that affect financing options when people are trying to be a little less vanilla in how they structure a deal to make it work? And how does that reflect in the legals, or the work that you have to do to help them to get it across the line?
I mean, I think from lenders' perspective, they're not used to it. So I think, they're cautious. At the same time, when you're doing something like a lease option, once the buyer has exercised that option and wants to buy, then it's a straightforward buy. The issues are more surrounding the fact that you've got this long lease in place, and mortgage lenders basically don't like that. On the few that I've tried to get consent, they've said no. So a lot of people are doing these deals without mortgage company consent, which is entirely their choice. It's their risk. So I think in that respect, there's a bit of sensitivity for lenders about what this is doing to the value of their asset that they could ultimately use to repay any defaulting, any debt. So it obviously works better where there's not lenders on the property already. But I'm also doing lots of things like title splitting, where properties are mortgaged and mortgage companies are open to that. And, we're creating leaseholds, or you're selling off part of the land. That all seems, lenders seem a lot more open to that. And, because the risk there is much lower, and they're just getting their charge over more titles, if you like.
Do you think lenders are using the same level of scrutiny as before? Do you think it's much tighter now in terms of the hoops that you have to jump through?
I think it's harder now, a lot harder. Obviously, I don't know from a broker perspective, but from a legal perspective, one of the big things is the source of funds. So, where the deposits have come from, they're being really strict about that. They're issuing lots and lots of documents. So it's not just a question of signing mortgage deeds. You've got minutes, you've got resolutions, you've got directors' waivers, you've got ILAs, you've got PGs. The documents that are being produced now, you've got things like insolvency declarations for both the directors and the corporate entity. It's not uncommon now to have sort of 8 to 10 documents to sign, even where a client is buying something for £75,000 on a 70% LTV. They are still treating it in this kind of belt and braces manner. And also the inquiries that they raise of us, of solicitors, can run anywhere. I'd say the average is around 40, with some are 60. So the information that they want is huge, and they're not really taking a view on anything.
And don't you think it's a bit strange that it's gone like that? Because after 2008, where everybody was talking about a new way of banking and challenger banks coming in, them being sleek, operating machines that worked efficiently, they're probably worse than the high street now, some of them. And
yeah, I don't believe. So obviously a lot of people are really keen on bridging, and bridging is a really great strategy. Buy the property, do it up, increase value, exit. Okay, so it's a great strategy. But I think when people think bridging is quick, that is absolutely a complete misunderstanding. I would say bridging is slower. So if you are just buying a property, an HMO or buy-to-let, commercial premises with a mortgage, with a normal mortgage, first charge, normal mortgage, that is actually quicker, which makes no sense. When you're buying with bridge, most bridging lenders don't allow what's called dual representation. So dual representation is where I act for the lender and the buyer. Separate representation is where I act for the buyer and the lender has their own solicitor to act for them. There's 2 solicitors, and that's what we call sep rep. So most bridging companies require sep rep. So what happens is the offer will be issued, and then the lender solicitor will contact me with pages and pages of inquiries, which I will then have to obviously complete. Client has to give me instructions on many of those. We have to send all those documents over, and then they will scrutinise. Lender solicitor will scrutinise, and lender solicitors seem to have a mentality of computer says no. So they just won't take commercial views. They won't look at it in the round. They don't seem to be assessing risk. So it's almost like the underwriters who would initially make that offer then are just expecting the solicitors to belt and braces, and they just won't take a view. So, for example, on a deal recently, I was asked to get a indemnity policy for covenants in an 1800 conveyance. Actually, that is not what you would do in a purchase. On a bog standard purchase with, when you look at CML handbook, it wouldn't necessarily be asking you for indemnity for an 1800 document. But this lender insisted on having indemnity insurance for an 1800 document. And that's just not standard practice in conveyancing.
Yeah.
So, things like if you do a local search with the highways, a lot of lenders won't accept that. They want a separate highway search. So it's things like that are slowing it. It's more costly to clients. It's overkill. A lot of the time it's overkill when related to risk. Obviously you're buying, for 3, 4, 5, 6 million, but when you're buying for 70 to 100, it just seems overkill.
Yeah, I totally hear where you're coming from. For me, I still feel that bridging is quicker from an overall lending perspective because I think the lenders are more geared up to move quickly. I'm not saying on the legal side, but on the lender's side, it doesn't go into the same sausage machine type of process that the likes of the challenger banks use, where the
Yeah.
bridges will hold on to it and there'll be one person pushing it through and it'll get through quicker. But I do understand where you're coming from. And customers often ask me, oh, how long will a loan take to draw down? And I always say, if it's a buy to let, you're looking at on average between 10 and 12 weeks, but it's probably going to be longer because there will be something that comes up because I've never had a deal where something hasn't come up. And bridging, I say 8 to 10 weeks, but again, it'll probably be longer. And then people will say, oh, I need to complete this because it's an auction purchase.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah,
Yes.
we'll do our best. We'll do our best. We'll push it as much as we
Yeah.
can. I'll be as proactive and like a wasp annoying everybody trying to get
Yes.
forward. But I can't guarantee it because
I think it depends. It depends massively on who the lender is. So there
Yeah.
are a couple of lenders where if you're getting a bridge for an auction property, we will be able to do it within 28 days.
Yeah.
If you know, and I do deals within 28 days, purchases, you know, on a buy to let with, you know, a bog standard lender where I'm doing dual rep, so I'm acting for both, then I could probably do it in 6 to 8 weeks. Okay, so I think 12 weeks is quite a long time for a vanilla buy to let. Okay, that to me is a long time. I would say it's more like a 6 to 8. Where there's bridging, depending on the bridging company, and this is a massive, massive issue. Depending on the company, I will sometimes say to my clients, as you're using this bridger, you need to add 3 weeks. Or, right, this one's really good, we should be able to do it fairly quickly. So the difference between, in legals, this is, because what I think you're maybe, you know, from Mark's perspective, when he's making the British application, it sounds like that's really streamlined and quick, and you get the offer and you get all of that through quickly. The blockage seems to be the bridging solicitors. So that's when it then just slows right down. So I think that's where it's not, a lot of them are not streamlined, and they treat every deal the same regardless of the value, regardless of the type of property. There's no differentiating. Now some bridgers have or lenders have now got what they call their kind of short form inquiries, so that's great. So for certain deals now they're actually using different documents and different inquiry sheets, and that does make a big difference. But you know, when your deal's bigger or at all complex, it is gonna get quite slowed down, I think, with lender solicitors.
Okay, and you can be honest in answering this question. Does it make a difference which broker is used?
I think it does, in so much as some brokers have better relationships with the lenders. So it might be that you can say to that broker, this lender is being this, you know, we're having a nightmare, we don't know what to do, it's just they won't budge. And that broker can sometimes then speak to the BDM or even the managing person of the lender or the underwriters and say, look, this is getting stuck at this legal point, is there anything you can do? So yes, I do think it makes a difference in that you can use your broker to facilitate speeding it up and to facilitate communication, because ultimately I don't speak to the lender direct, the lender's solicitor speaks to the lender. So I say things to the lender's solicitor that then, you know, is then translated or lost in translation to the lender. Whereas if I speak to the broker and say, look, Mark, can you speak to somebody in underwriting? You get to speak to the actual decision maker. And that can make a big difference.
Yeah, we actually had it yesterday with, it was a proof of funds, actually, well, not proof of funds, an origin of funds. And there was a transaction that another broker was doing with one of my customers. It was a previous broker they've used, and the actual deposit was coming from a limited company that was owned by a family member, but there was no actual shareholder connection. So
right.
Shareholders. and that lender will not accept a non-associated limited company loan or anything like that as the deposit. It's lenders out there. So they came to me and said, well, what can we do? This isn't going through. So we would just, we've got a really good relationship with this lender. So I rang the lender up and said, look, what about if we add the shareholder of the one limited company to the other limited company as a 25% shareholder, because they're in the same family? Why do that? And they said, well, yeah, that'll work, because they'll be a shareholder and therefore they can lend the money because it's an associated company now.
Yeah, because otherwise they were viewing it as a third-party loan and 100% leverage, and that's the concern that they were having, is effectively it's 100% borrowing on this property, which, because it was an arm's length on paper transaction, it was like the client had gone and borrowed some money off somebody that they just some third party. So that then it effectively made it not an arm's length transaction, not arm's length borrowing. And that's why they would look at leverage in a different way. But the fact that you can just pick up the phone and talk to them about it does make a big difference when these things arise, and when these things arise in the legal process also, it can really help.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I know Ro and I have had many a conversation, and I think Ro, I think you understand where my strengths lie in relationships with lenders, and I know you like going direct to lenders and talking to them about their policies and having meetings with them and understanding their things. So maybe one day it's a job in broking for you, Ro.
Maybe, but I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, for me as a borrower, I always want to make sure that the broker I'm using, or the intermediary, does actually have the ability to have those conversations and has those strong relationships, because it's never straightforward. And as Mark mentioned, I build those relationships with lenders myself, but actually, I'm not looking to do a job that that somebody else can do, or the right intermediary can do. I just like building relationships because it helps me with some of the challenges I face and solving problems. But 100% agree. It's it's a relationship driven business, and if we leave it to the process always, and the process it's going to fail at some point.
And the other thing you have to remember is that we look at the lender as this commercial entity, but at the end of the day, there's actual people behind that facade making decisions, trying to do their job well. It may well be that they maybe hadn't thought of a solution, but actually when presented with one, they're like, oh yeah, that can work. So we're dealing with these big corporate lenders or whoever they may be, but ultimately we're dealing with people who are sitting behind just trying to do the best job they can. So if we can help them, they will in return cooperate and try and help us. And that doesn't always come across in an email. It doesn't always come across, certainly from solicitors to solicitors, because we can get quite pugilistic and, it can get a bit fraught. Okay. Whereas, sometimes a broker's relationship with one of the underwriters or a valuer or whatever, it's a very different dynamic. But I don't get the opportunity to form those dynamics because that's not my role. Yep. So that's when the broker can step in. And, there's a trust. The lender will think, oh, yeah, well, I've done, X number of deals with this broker. The deals have all gone really well. We've not had problems. I'll listen to what they've got to say.
And I think the whole relationship between the solicitor and the broker is very important, because you can, if you're not happy with something, Keira, I'm sure you are now comfortable enough with me to tell me to go and do one, or to go and sort it out, or to.
I never would do something like that, Mark.
But you know what I mean.
Although I'm more likely to now you've had a haircut, because you look like a bit of a.
It's growing back.
Yeah, you look like You look like you might be joining the some kind of far right organisation.
That's not a bad thing.
Right in.
I am.
I'm only kidding. I know you wouldn't.
No. The whole thing about the relationship between the broker and the solicitor is the thing that gets that deal over the line at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it does work. And I know there's cases that you've dealt with Wharf that have had challenges that we've overcome and pushed in the right way. And at the end of the day, the customer has been happy and seen the progress that the solicitor and the broker have made together. because there's sometimes that you're dealing with a solicitor and it's like they just don't understand. And there's strategies that you mention or anything, and they're like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And they don't understand property. They understand.
And also, I think there's quite a lot of brokers out there who, once they've got the offer, they feel like maybe their job's done. And so to find a broker that doesn't see it that way, who, you know, once the offer's out and everything, sees it still as part of their remit and part of their role to see it through to completion, is refreshing. Because otherwise you're kind of left a bit high and dry. You've no line of communication with the lender direct, and you are then just, you know, you're kind of stuck in your legal silo. So I think brokers like Mark, where you kind of see it as a whole deal, as opposed to, oh, you know, lenders lent, right, move on, what's the next thing I can be doing? It's more of an approach where you follow it through from start to finish, but the finish isn't the offer, the finish is completing the purchase or the refinance or whatever it might be. And that's a different approach.
Yeah, it doesn't even stop there. That's I suppose getting the first deal to offer is half the job, and then it's about creating a further relationship where you've understood what the client's motivation is, and 9 times out of 10 it's to build wealth, and you continue with that project with the customer, and you go all the way to where they want to get to. And I don't think I've completed a project with a customer ever, because they're ongoing, and you keep that trust and the relationship and the conversations going consistently. And then when you've dealt with a solicitor or an accountant, whoever, who they're happy with, you bring them in on different decisions as to how to steer the portfolio, and it works well. And I hate the word power team, but once a customer has got a team that they can trust, it's great. And
I think one of the things that I quite like when we work together is that there'll be, you know, emails backwards and forwards and various things that come up or whatever, but it'll be a three-way email. It'll be me, you, and the client, and we're a team. The three of us are a team.
I love to see that. I love to see that.
You know what I mean? So it's sort of the client always knows what's happening. The client understands what the broker and solicitor and how we're trying to work together, and demonstrating how we're trying to work together in the client's best interests. And so the client knows that they've got like support, and they've got two people who are, you know, on their side working together, as opposed to working, you know, banging heads. Yeah. And clients can see that collaboration. And I think that's reassuring for clients, that that's an ongoing collaborative approach, and that clients are included in that. You know, we're not doing things and talking to each other without clients being aware of what's going on. And, you know, we're allocating tasks, or we're asking, you know, is this better for you to do, or shall I do it, or does the client need to do something? And so the three people are all working together as a team. And that's, you know, I think that's actually really, really nice for clients.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you a question, and this is great conversation. You know, the perspectives from borrower, broker, solicitor. I agree with everything you said. When it comes to the different types of levels of questions that funders or their solicitors ask you to deal with, we're talking about solicitors' inquiries. Do you find that there is a difference in terms of where the capital is actually coming from? And by that, I mean, when you've got a lender who is lending their own funds versus a lender that's actually funded by somewhere else, do you find that depending on their funding line determines how hard they are to work with to actually get things across the line? And perhaps a bit of a broker question as well.
I mean, I think from my perspective, I don't always know. Okay, so you know, I'll get an offer from X lender. I don't actually always know how that lender is funded. So for me, I don't know if I can answer the question. What makes a big difference for me is, so there are certain lenders that are more problematic. It may be that there is a correlation that I'm unaware of between those problematic lenders and how they're funded. But there is also a correlation, and there is also, it makes a difference who the lawyers are. So, for example, I sometimes get asked by clients, if I'm on if it's a SEP rep, I get asked by a client, it's SEP rep, they've told me I can use which one shall I ask for? And I know absolutely categorically straight away which one they should ask for.
Yeah.
So it's the same lender. They've got a panel of lender solicitors, and I say, don't go with them or go with them, because they will take a much more, a reasonable approach to acting for lenders. So even regardless of how it's funded, depending on which solicitor acts for the lender, will make a huge difference as to how the transaction will flow.
Makes complete sense, and I've got experience of that as well, especially with some of the bigger firms where they might. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, where they might have perhaps paralegals who are doing all the work at the beginning, and then the senior partner looks at it at the end.
So
and
I will get
right
transactions where I'm ready, and I think the lender's ready, and then I'll say to the lender, "Can we draw down in 4 days or whatever?" And then they'll come back and say, "We've got to get the file signed off," and then I wait 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So there are situations where that happens, and I didn't know. I mean, obviously, unless it says paralegal, but most of the time it doesn't. I maybe didn't know that solicitor, that lender's representative, couldn't make the decision.
Yeah.
And so then it comes as a bit of a shock. But also then what will happen quite a lot is then they will come back with more inquiries.
Exactly.
So you think you're done, you think you're clear and free, and you're looking at completion, and you think everything's dandy. And then it's not dandy, and they come back with a load more inquiries because somebody more senior has taken a look at it and gone, "Oh no, we need this, 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 and this, and this."
Yeah.
And so then you're not back to square one, but you're certainly back a few paces. And then you have to refer those inquiries to the seller solicitor who goes, "I thought you said you were ready."
Yeah.
So it is not a great situation, and that's also partly why I know there's certain firms who act for lenders who are really, really good, and certain people. So it's not even the firm. It's the individual solicitor. So there's certain solicitors who are much better within certain firms that I do business with over and over and over. And then there's, but there's certain. So there's one absolute amazing, brilliant bridging company. Their lawyers are a joy. And whenever I get them, I go, "Oh, hi, I'm really pleased it's you." And it just goes through just like butter. It's amazing. And so whenever I see that lender and that solicitor, I'm like, yes.
Which lender is it, Keira? You can
Roma.
say Roma. You like Roma? I'm good friends with Scott, the Roma.
And then they use Kite Steinite Levi, and there's a guy there who I always get on the other side, and he's just great. He's very responsive. Their inquiries are reasonable. Their documents are sensible. And it's just lovely. And I remember I went to the Landlord Investors show once. I went up to the Roma stall, and I said, "I love you guys. This is what I'm doing. This is what you're doing." And did a little video for them, and they posted it on social and stuff. But genuinely, that's rare for me to do. And in the same token, I went up to another stall and said, "What are you doing? This is hell on earth. We can't work like this. You need to have a look at how you're deciding to make your decisions and so on and so forth." And just said, "I've had deals with this other lender where they've fallen through because it's taken so long." And sellers have just gone, "Do you know what? Forget it."
Yeah.
Right. Going back to your question then about funding, and from a broker's perspective on that, it does make a difference, because some lenders who have multiple funding lines or more flexible funding lines, if a decision is made, you can go back and challenge it and they can do something. Whereas if there is a one funding line or inflexible funders, this is the policy, we cannot change.
Yep.
That's it. And there's nothing a broker, a solicitor, or anybody can do about it. As much as they argue and try and change it, it's not changing, because it's the funders who, to be honest, don't really care about the granular detail. They just want their percentage return at the end of the year.
And that makes complete sense. And this is great to have this conversation, because obviously we understand, for our listeners, they understand now the importance of having the right solicitors and the right solicitors on the other side. I think you're bang on, Keira, because I've had experiences where the solicitors just did not talk to each other, or only did by email, and only did it, once a week when they had all of their inquiries together, and it just took forever. Because really, just
there's some lenders who, and every lender's different. Every lender's solicitor's different. So some will say, "Don't send us anything till you've got everything," and some will say, "Send us as much as you can with follow up." And then you have, lists of 64 things that go backwards and forwards, all the colours of the rainbow. And I've replied in red, please comment in blue, then you comment in green, and then it's purple. And then, when you get to purple, you're in trouble, right? You really do know when you're in trouble then, because, you're now on purple. And, it's painful, and it's painful for the borrower, painful for the broker. It's actually painful for both solicitors.
Yeah.
But I do understand that lender solicitor hands are often tied. And even, that might not be how they'd run a transaction if they were buying for cash. But their hands are also sometimes tied by the instructions they're getting from their lender. And that's not their fault. It is just sometimes the way it is, because the lender, as you say, is inflexible. And, I've had, lender solicitors say to me, look, I know an 1800 conveyance, you don't need an indemnity. I know that. He's a lawyer to a lawyer. I know. But my lender wants it.
Yeah.
He can't do anything. I can't do anything. It's just the way it is.
So really great points here. And I think
my dogs are barking.
Okay. And coupled with Mark's point about the funding lines, it makes complete sense. So I think for us as borrowers, it's always good to ask those questions up front and make sure that the solicitors that can be chosen are ones that are going to work well, to your points, Keira, and not obviously, if the deal is going to be dealt with on an exception basis is not quite in line with policy. Making sure
sometimes
that,
sometimes clients will say to me, which are the better lender, which are the best lenders, which is a broker question. It's a broker's area of expertise. And I would always say, you don't choose your product based on fast solicitors, or you need to choose the product that's right for the deal.
To start with, exactly.
And the broker will advise you properly. And then we have to just kind of suck it up and do what we can. But ultimately, you don't pick a lender based on legals. Because that's not in your best interest.
How many times in the last year do you reckon anybody's asked me what lender to choose on anything other than rate?
Well, probably never.
Hardly. Never.
Hardly.
It doesn't happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
Clients will ask me, clients will say, which is the best lender? Which lender do you think's best? And I'm like saying, I can't assist you with that. That's not, I can assist you with a brilliant broker who can answer you all day long, but that's not what I do. So it's about being really clear about where your area of expertise is and making sure that the people that are working with you with the other expertise are the right people. Yep. So that that client's best served, by those other people.
From personal experience, I would definitely, looking back, I would have paid more not to have paid more on the rate, not to have had the stress caused by the incompetence of the legal the legal team.
That's interesting. That is very interesting.
But that only comes.
It's a massive.
Exactly.
Sorry, Mark.
Exactly.
I said it only comes with experience, and a lot of the people who contact us from different training companies are very much about making a deal work and making sure that there's a profit at the end of it. They don't look at it from the long-term journey that property investment should be. So it's very interesting. I think the more and more experienced you get, the more and more, and it is even with us as brokers and the commission side of it. So we get paid based on the loan amount, and different lenders pay us different amounts of commission. We don't, one, because it's not ethically right, but we don't go chasing the higher commission. We go chasing the best structure of the whole deal for the customer, even though we lose out, because not only does it make our lives a lot easier, but it makes the customer's overall journey in property investment more productive.
Yeah,
and also you're building trust with that customer. You're building trust with that customer. That customer needs to know that you've got integrity, that you're ethical, that you're acting in their best interest. And that may well be that, financially, you initially maybe, you're not making quite as much. But ultimately, if you've got integrity and you believe in doing the right thing, and you conduct yourself to a high standard, which I, firmly believe that, I won't cut corners for clients. And, if clients want me to do something that's maybe not quite right, I would rather not do that work, because I do firmly believe that they need trust in me, that I will do what is right and appropriate, and I've got a duty of care which I take very seriously.
Yep.
And so, you know, if you're just going after the biggest commission, then you're not discharging that duty. And I think some brokers, maybe that is more of a driver, but certainly, you know, with people like Mark, it's not. That's not what it's about. And then also that client will come back to you in the future. So again, it's about taking the long-term view. I have masses of repeat clients. I have masses of recommendations, and that, you know, that's important. You know, I could have one client who I never saw again in 5-10 years. That's not how I want it to be. I want to build the long-term relationship with them, and part of that is building trust and acting with integrity and ethically, which I just think, and proper professionalism, and that's really important.
Yeah. And what I'd also add as well is, going back to my point earlier, obviously the deal needs to stack. So I wouldn't just pay more just for the sake of it. But if the deal still stacks that makes sense, I'd rather pay more for a more seamless experience, knowing that actually it's going to be less stress, and it gives me probably a faster transaction and then more time and bandwidth to go and do the next deal. Whereas if I spent all my time, you know, stressing about one deal just because it was with a lender that was offering a lower rate, even though legals were a complete headache, then that's missed opportunities in other ways as well. So that's why I think there's certainly value in that.
And you know what?
And also, I think
go on, Keira.
Well, I was just going to say, cheap isn't always cheerful.
No,
and
the opposite.
You know, and I'm not saying you should pay over the odds as a client.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying. But, you know, I had a comment from a client the other day saying, you're not the cheapest, but you're the best. And I was like, you know what? You could put that on my gravestone every day of the week. I'll take it. Because, and it is true, because, you know, I'm not going to charge bottom rates. If I charge really bottom rates, I would have loads and loads of work, but the service would suffer. So effectively, you're paying less, but you're getting less service. So you need to kind of think about what's your priority here, what is important, what not. You know, do I want to be just one of a number of clients, and, you know, the solicitor will just sit there and just doesn't care? Or do I want to pay for a service and a responsiveness and a understanding of the type of deal that I'm doing? And I think that is worth some financial recompense, or, you know, I think that is worth money.
Yeah, if you think about the whole situation with the NHS and private medical cover, a lot of people take private medical cover out because they don't want the bog standard normal waiting lists and the potentially not as good treatment as they would have in the private medical world. And it's the same with all different types of industries. I just bought a jacket from an import website. And do you know what? It's a lovely jacket. Wore it nice and warm, really enjoying it. I've had it for 3 weeks now. The seam of the pocket has come undone, and the lining of the inside of the jacket. And it's like, it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same. Sometimes that will happen with a broker, it will happen with a solicitor, that the seams will start fraying, and it's thing. So,
and, you know, there's certain law firms within the UK where their business model is structured very differently to the way I work. And, you know, if I find that they are on the other side, or they are in the chain at any point in the chain, I will say to my client, you need to add 6 weeks. Now, that's not ideal, is it? But that's the reality. So, you know, I'm sure that firm, well, I know that firm is charging less than me, but I also know that the transaction, because they're involved in it, is going to take 6 more weeks, because the people that work there have got too much work. Because they're cheap, they get a lot of work, but there's still only one person working 9 to 5. And so, yes, of course, it's going to be slower. They've got too much work. Whereas what I do is do the high quality work for slightly more money, but really quickly. So you've got a choice. Clients are entitled to, you know, SRA is very clear. You choose your solicitor. You cannot be pressured. I've had stories recently where clients have said, well, the estate agent said, unless I use their solicitors, they won't accept my offer. That's unlawful.
That's ridiculous.
Unlawful.
That's terrible.
But then I say, that's because your solicitor's getting £500 back that you're paying. So you're paying your legal fee, thinking it's for legals. Actually, 500 of that's going to the estate agent.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's a difficult marketplace, and it's extremes. And it's the same with lenders. So, you know, when I talk about the bad lenders, they're very, very bad. when I talk about the good, they're very, very good. But there's a load in the middle. You know, there's a load that are just getting on with it, and it's just price of doing business. The very bad are very few and far between. The very good are very few and far between. And the same, I think, applies to solicitors, to brokers, to medics, to vets, you know. And so it's up to the client to decide where they want to invest their money, where they think they'll get that, you know, additional add-on service.
On that, brokers are the glue that holds it all together and paints a gloss over the whole process and makes it look like that swan swimming along with the feet kicking below. That's the broker's main job, to make it appear that that transaction is as seamless and as smooth as possible. And that's integral to every deal, in my opinion. I would say that.
And I think as lawyers, we would love that to be the case. But 9 times out of 10, we can't make that be the situation, because we're here to protect our clients. And if there are problems, we are going to highlight those problems. Yeah, because ultimately my role is to say what the issues are, and then the client makes a decision within the parameters of a lender approving and so on. But, you know, ultimately it's not my money, it's my client's money. And if my client decides that actually that's too risky for them, or they're actually comfortable with that level of risk, then I am instructed by the client, and that is fine. As long as I've explained to the client fully what it is they are potentially taking on, then, you know, so we solicitors, unfortunately, are in the, you know, unenviable position of being the harbingers of doom. And certainly I feel like that is a lot of the time how we're viewed, like we're trying to put a fly in the ointment, or, oh God, legals, and oh, the solicitor said this, that, and the other. But ultimately what we're actually trying to do is protect you and try and make sure you understand what you're getting yourself into. And yes, that does often come across as kind of negative. And so I can understand why people think, oh, solicitors, oh, they're all this, they're all that. You know, I can get it. So we don't perhaps have that nice feeling that you do as brokers of it all kind of just, you're able to do that. We're the ones who are kind of, you know, kicking the legs, but obviously kicking. So it's not quite as nice a position, I think.
Yeah, I think when I do public speaking, a lot of the time, I introduce myself as my idea is to help people achieve their dreams and make them millionaires. And that is what a broker is there to do, is to make the customer a lot of money, if that's their motivation. And yeah, it's bringing all the different parties together to work harmoniously and make sure any problems are ironed out.
And I think from our perspective, my role is a protective role. So I feel like I'm trying to protect my client at all times. Yeah. And, you know, I'm not saying we can't sometimes be overprotective of our clients, but I'd rather be overprotective than leave them with risk that they don't fully understand. And so, yes, we are, you know, lawyers are risk averse by nature. We're overprotective, we're overcautious, you know, we're all those things, but it comes from a place of goodness. It comes from wanting to look after you.
Yes.
You've got our interests at heart. No, we know that.
You know, we do want the best for you. And we just can't always deliver what you want to hear.
Makes sense. What are you've given us some great tips, Keira. I think understanding obviously who the solicitor is on the other side is really important. And, you know, a solicitor who's got experience with other lenders and other solicitor firms is someone obviously who can provide that. What are your other tips for our listeners who are, you know, who've got deals that they're pushing through with certain lenders? How should they best prepare themselves for a as little stress as possible during the legal process on to get to that drawdown? Because that's what this is about. How do we unlock that finance?
I think being prepared and having your house in order is massive. So obviously having a great broker, things like making sure you've got somebody who can get your buildings insurance sorted out. That's another place we seem to stick. And making sure lenders' interest is noted, making sure it's for the, you know, the valuation amount, not the purchase price, and, you know, insurance amount. So that often gets lost in translation, and it's going backwards and forwards to, you know, to get that sorted out. Source of funds is huge. You know, you need to have the paperwork. So for me, it's not a question of, oh, well, I've got, you know, 60,000 in my bank, here's my bank statement. That doesn't really help anything. That's proof of funds. But what I actually need is source of funds. So I need to know where that £60,000 came from. Have you got a completion statement, a will? Have you sold something? It's that paper trail that can cause massive delays. And then if you're doing, if you're doing a property where maybe you've done some development or you're going to do some development, lenders are massive about planning, building regulations, warranties, those kinds of bits of paper need to be in place, because if not, it causes delays and the clients are then scrabbling around trying to find the various bits of paper they need.
Yeah.
So I'd rather be drowned in paper than have nothing.
Makes sense. Very good. Any questions from you, Mark, on the any more on the broker side? And I think this is great, having the input of a seasoned broker and a solicitor on these matters, because there's so many things we get to cover that wouldn't be so apparent, from just one perspective.
No, I think the whole thing, the relationship with a broker and a solicitor, is integral to a good client journey. But one thing I will mention is the solicitor in the journey is the only person who's actually qualified. Nobody else in that journey has any qualifications at all. So that solicitor needs to be there. It's so important that that solicitor is there. And I think, like you said, you're the harbingers of doom, but you're the only one that's actually qualified. Brokers aren't qualified. There used to be a little jokey question that went round, and it was who's the odd one out? It was Bob Diamond, Fred Goodwin, somebody else, another leader of a bank, and Jeremy Clarkson. Who's the odd one out? And everyone was like, oh, it's Jeremy Clarkson because he presented Top Gear. And he was like, well, it is Jeremy Clarkson, but the reason is he's the only one with the banking exams. Nobody else has got any banking exams.
That's so interesting. I can't believe it.
So every lender out there has no qualification. Every broker out there on an unregulated basis has no qualification. The underwriters, they don't have the qualification. It's only what they've been taught at that particular lender. And obviously, a lender is going to protect their own interests and does have to sign up to a code of conduct. And there is PRA and there's the FCA, but it's an unregulated space we work in.
Yeah.
So the solicitor,
and I think we're massively regulated. I mean, we've got regulation coming out of our ears. It's every week there's something else we need to remember to do and all the rest of it. But also, being qualified and getting the qualifications means something to me. It is a matter of pride, and it is something that I feel is important and is relevant. And it doesn't mean that I have to be respected just because I happen to have a qualification. It's not that simple. But at the same time, I went to law school, it takes 7 years to get qualified. It's like a medic. And then I've got 22 years experience on top of that. So, that's 29 years of learning my craft and qualifying in it and taking exams and continual professional development. We have to do, we have to do ongoing tests. We have ongoing exams we have to do every year and so on. And we have to do those to keep our practicing certificates. So, it is, I do think we add value, and I do think we want to help. And I do think that we, most of us, or, lots of us do know our stuff, but we're still a service industry. We still have to work for our clients, but ultimately that expertise is important and necessary, and something that we know that I do think has value. And I do think the people's relationship with solicitors have changed. Solicitors are seen more now almost as cashiers on a till or whatever. And I don't know where this has come from. I think we've done it to ourselves to a certain extent. We've kind of sold ourselves to the lowest common denominator. But ultimately, we have a lot to bring to the party and a lot to offer. And like a medic, we're experts, and we have skills that we want to bring and that can benefit you.
The reason I think you've been suggested that you are cashier type gatekeepers to the funds is because of the credit crunch and the challenger bank market. and I'm not saying just the challengers. I'm bolting on fintechs and bridging lenders, so that you become more transactional than experts, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, so I mean, there is a
according to
lot
the
of
industry.
checklists. Yeah, it's a lot
Yeah.
of lists, you know. So we get inquiries from the lender, and it's a list of almost tick boxes, right? So I still get to do the law. So I still get to do my title checks and reconveyances, and I do get to draft, because a lot of what I do now, especially with the creatives, is drafting actual legal documents from scratch. And I love that side of it. But unfortunately, also a lot of what I do is checklists, and that's not really legal. That's, you know, here's the question, here's the answer, here's the question, here's the answer. That's not exercising my legal brain. So I get a lot from doing talks, you know, where I'm talking about legal things, or, you know, when I've got a complicated title or an interesting deal that's, you know, I'll say to my clients, oh, this is really exciting, this is a bit different, and that keeps me interested and alert, and because I actually get to exercise the legal side of my brain.
Definitely. Very interesting stuff. Very interesting. And do you know what? I think we could go on for weeks, years.
Yeah, we could probably bore people to death quite easily.
Yeah, I think so. And this is what, you know, next week at the MIPIM Festival, it's all about, and talking to people about that. And next year, I presume you'll be at the MIPIM Festival, Keira?
Well, this is a very assumptive approach. I haven't given it any thought, but I would love to go. Yes,
You should go.
I mean, it's on my hit list of things that I think would be really, really, really useful, and I'd love to meet, you know, like-minded people, swap ideas, you know, what people are doing, what they're finding in the market, what's usual, what's unusual. So it's always good to have people to bounce those kinds of things off, because you think this is a bit odd, and then you think, well, is it odd or is it just me? So it's always nice to have those people to talk to, and they go, oh yeah, no, we're finding this is just as bad, or whatever. It's a nice community. And
you know what, Ro? I think it's our year anniversary today that we met each other.
It is. It is indeed.
Yeah, a year today.
Happy anniversary, guys.
Yeah.
There we go.
Wow. And it was over. I couldn't walk. I had a bad back. And I was in so much pain. And you met us in the Lamashu restaurant's bar.
That's right. Yeah.
And did we get you a gin and tonic to start with?
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I think we did. I think we got you a gin and tonic, and I obviously had a soft drink as usual. So
but it was great. I mean, it was just a great example of, like, you know, building relationships in a new environment over there in Cannes. And we had a lot of great property chat, and then obviously the podcast is one of the results of that. That's great.
Yeah.
And so, what have you got plans for MIPIM? What have you got meetings in, or what have you got anything sort of in the diary while you're there, Mark? What's it going to look like?
I get there Monday morning, and then I have drinks on Monday night. Then I've got from 9 o'clock breakfast all the way through till about 10 o'clock in the evening.
Wow.
Booked. And on the Tuesday, I don't think there's anything that special going on, i.e.
And what is it? Is it networking events? Is it talks? Is it who is it mixing with developers?
No,
is it mixing with other brokers?
What you do is you book meetings in with people. So I'll be meeting some of the lenders, some of the accountants.
Right, yeah.
There's people like that. And then you'll bump into people as you're walking around, and you'll just have drinks or whatever it may be. And it just turns into everything. But I'm booked literally from Monday night all the way through. My last event is Friday morning at 9 o'clock, but then I'm staying till Saturday night. So I have a day.
Sounds exhausting.
It is tiring. It is tiring.
Yeah.
But if you drink, it's a lot more tiring. Luckily, I don't, so I can get a bit of good rest in the evenings. But it is full on, and some people can only last a couple of days there because it's like networking on speed. It's pretty. It's pretty hardcore, but it's well worth it.
I do think it's something I think I'll look at in the future, and when you get back, it'd be great to just sort of touch base and find out, how it all went.
I was thinking about doing a bit of a video diary when I was there.
Yes.
So see, I can share that. So we'll see what happens. But I think I may do that. I just feel a bit of a prat walking around with a.
Everybody
video.
else will be doing it. All the influencers will be
I
there.
thought you were
You'll
going to
fit
say
right
everybody
in.
thinks you're a prat anyway. So it's,
You'll fit right in.
Yes, good. Right, we'll end it there. But
good.
thank you, Keira.
Okay, lovely.
Really appreciate
thanks very much.
And if people want to get in contact with you, how can they do that?
So probably Facebook's easiest. So if you look me up on there, it's got my maiden name as well, so it's Keira Guyton Rawdon, but there aren't many Keira Rawdons out there. So if you type it in, you'll find me. You could go on the Spencer West website. That's the firm where I'm a partner. Again, that's dead easy to find. But if you just pop my name into Google, it'll come up with loads of stuff. I do check it every now and then to make sure it's coming up with the right stuff. That's probably just as easy as anything else.
Excellent. Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
That concludes another episode of Show Me the Money podcast, Unlocking Property Finance. Connect with us on social media, where we share additional tips, resources, and behind-the-scenes insights. Feel free to reach out to us with any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep making those smart investment moves. This has been Show Me the Money, Unlocking Property Finance.